My name is Trisha Williams, a 68-year-old retired teacher from Portland. After my husband passed, my son Jacob convinced me to install security cameras. They stopped working months ago, but yesterday the repair company fixed them without warning. I opened the app to check if they worked while Jacob and his wife Amanda were house-sitting. What I saw made my blood freeze. Their hushed voices, the papers spread across my dining table, and that phone call they made. I never expected betrayal from my own flesh and blood. Before I continue, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe if family secrets make your heart race like mine did that day. Looking back now, I can see how trust can blind us to what's right in front of our eyes. My son Jacob has always been the light of my life, my pride and joy. As my only child, he received all the love and attention my heart could give, especially after his father Thomas passed away 5 years ago. Jacob was always there when Thomas was sick, spending nights at the hospital researching treatments and holding my hand through the worst moments. When the heart failure finally took my husband of 40 years, Jacob was my rock. I remember how he held me at the funeral, his tall frame, supporting me as my legs threatened to give way. At 35, he had his father's kind brown eyes and gentle manner, or so I thought. 3 years ago, Jacob met Amanda at a work conference. She was striking with her perfect blonde hair and confident smile. She worked in the same financial consulting firm as Jacob, and I was happy when they started dating. When they married after just 8 months, I'll admit I was surprised by the rush, but Jacob seemed so happy. Amanda was always polite to me, though something in her smile never quite reached her eyes. Still, I dismissed my reservations as the typical mother-in-law anxiety. My life after Thomas died settled into a quiet routine. I live in the same 2-story house where we raised Jacob in a peaceful neighborhood just outside Portland. Thomas left me financially comfortable, not wealthy by any means, but I had our savings, his pension, and our modest investments. The most valuable asset was probably our small beach house on the Oregon coast, a simple place we bought 30 years ago that had appreciated significantly over time. I'd spent many happy weekends there with Thomas, and later with Jacob, teaching him to build sandcastles and fly kites along the shore. About 6 months ago, there was a break-in at my neighbor Dorothy's house. Nothing valuable was taken, but it frightened our entire community. Jacob immediately insisted I install security cameras. "Mom, you live alone now. You need protection," he said, his concern seeming so genuine. "I'll take care of everything." True to his word, Jacob hired a company to install cameras at my front door back entrance and in the main living areas. He set everything up on my phone with an app that let me see the feeds. I felt safer knowing I could check my house, even when I wasn't home. But about 4 months ago, the system stopped working. The app would only show black screens where the camera feeds should be. I called Jacob right away. "Don't worry about it, Mom," he reassured me. "These systems glitch sometimes. I'll call the company and get someone out to fix it." Weeks passed, and despite my occasional reminders, the cameras remained offline. Jacob always had an excuse. The company was backed up with service calls the technician had canceled. He needed to be present when they came. I eventually stopped asking. At 68, I found myself increasingly dependent on Jacob for anything technology-related. My generation didn't grow up with smartphones and apps, and though I tried to learn, there was so much I didn't understand. Last month, Jacob mentioned that he and Amanda were planning a trip to Mexico in the summer. During our Sunday dinner together, Amanda suggested I might want to visit my sister Eleanor in Seattle. "It's been so long since you've had a proper visit with her," Amanda said, cutting her chicken into precise tiny pieces. "And Jacob and I could house sit for you, make sure everything's taken care of." It did sound appealing. Eleanor had been asking me to come stay for years, and at 72, she wasn't getting any younger. With Jacob and Amanda watching my house, I wouldn't have to worry about anything. So last week, I packed my bags for a 2-week stay with Eleanor. Jacob drove me to the train station, carrying my suitcase and making sure I had everything I needed. "Don't worry about a thing, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. "Amanda and I will take good care of the house. You just enjoy your time with Aunt Eleanor." The first few days with my sister were wonderful. We stayed up late talking about old times, looked through photo albums, and she introduced me to her friends at her weekly bridge game. Eleanor lived in a beautiful apartment with views of the Puget Sound, and we spent hours just watching the ferries cross the water. On my 4th day there, I received an unexpected call from Northwest Security, the company that had installed my cameras. "Mrs. Williams," the young man on the phone said, This is Ryan from Northwest Security. I wanted to let you know that our technician completed the service call at your residence today. The camera system is up and running again. I was confused. I didn't schedule a service call. Oh, Ryan sounded equally confused. We have an authorization here from, let me check, a Jacob Williams. It says he's authorized to make decisions about your account. Of course, Jacob was authorized. He had set everything up in the first place. That's my son, I explained. He must have finally arranged for the repair. Thank you for letting me know. After hanging up, I felt a small surge of curiosity. With the cameras working again, I could check on my house. Not that I was worried Jacob and Amanda wouldn't take good care of it, but I was a little homesick and wanted to see my familiar rooms. I opened the app on my phone, expecting to see empty rooms, or perhaps Jacob and Amanda watching TV. What I saw instead made my stomach tighten with an inexplicable dread. The camera feed flickered to life on my phone screen, showing a clear view of my dining room. Instead of an empty house or casual house-sitting, I saw Jacob and Amanda sitting at my table surrounded by stacks of papers. Their expressions were serious-focused, and something about their posture made me instinctively uneasy. I turned up the volume, catching fragments of their conversation. The will is pretty straightforward, Jacob was saying, shuffling through papers that looked distressingly familiar. They were from my home office filing cabinet where I kept all my important documents. What about property values? Amanda asked, her voice hushed, despite being alone in the house. The beach house has to be worth at least $500,000 by now. I felt a chill run through me. Why were they discussing my will and the value of my beach house? She doesn't need to know until it's done, Amanda said, reaching across to touch Jacob's hand. It's better this way. Jacob got up and started pacing, running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was nervous. My mom trusts me completely, he said, and there was a note in his voice I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Amanda pulled out her phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. Stanley, it's Amanda Williams. We're going through the paperwork now. Excellent, a male voice responded. And you've got the power of attorney documents I sent over. Jacob leaned toward the phone. We do, but I'm still not sure about the cognitive assessment part. That seems extreme. My hands began to shake. Cognitive assessment. Power of attorney. These were terms I associated with elderly people who couldn't make decisions for themselves anymore. People with dementia or serious illness. Not me. It's a necessary step, the man Amanda had called, Stanley replied. You can't execute a power of attorney if there are questions about her competence. The evaluation will make everything legally binding. What about the beach house? Jacob asked. That's the most valuable asset, and Mom's really attached to it. Sentimentality doesn't pay bills, Amanda said sharply. Once we have control of her assets, we can make better financial decisions than she can. I felt like I'd been slapped. Control of my assets. Better financial decisions. I might not be a financial expert like Jacob and Amanda, but I'd managed my money just fine for decades. Thomas and I had been careful savers our whole lives, and I'd continued to be prudent with our nest egg after he died. My mind flashed back to conversations over the past few months. Jacob asking casual questions about my will. Amanda suggesting I might be starting to slip when I misplaced my glasses. Jacob offering to simplify my financial accounts by putting his name on them. On the screen, Amanda was now showing Jacob a document. This gives us emergency guardianship if we can prove she's unable to care for herself or make sound decisions. Jacob looked hesitant. I don't know, Amanda. That's taking it pretty far. It's for her own good, Amanda insisted, her voice hardening. You've seen how forgetful she's getting. Remember when she couldn't find her car in the parking lot? That had happened once at a crowded shopping mall during the holidays. Anyone could have been confused in that massive parking lot with identical rows of cars. I watched in growing horror as they gathered more of my personal documents from my home office. Bank statements, investment records, the deed to the beach house. The will Thomas and I had prepared years ago, which left everything to Jacob anyway, though apparently that wasn't good enough for them. They wanted control now, while I was still alive. Eleanor, I called out, my voice shaking. Eleanor, come here, please. My sister hurried into the guest room where I was staying. What's wrong, Trisha? You're white as a sheet. I simply handed her my phone. Look, listen. Eleanor put on her glasses and watched the screen, her expression changing from confusion to shock to anger. "Those conniving little," she whispered, unable to finish the sentence. As we watched together, the full impact of what was happening hit me like a physical blow. My son, my only child, was conspiring with his wife to declare me incompetent and take control of everything I owned. They were plotting against me in my own home, while I trusted them to take care of it. The betrayal was so profound I could barely breathe. "We're not letting them get away with this," Eleanor declared, her normally gentle voice hard with determination. She had always been the more outspoken of the two of us, ready to fight when necessary. "Not in a million years." For the rest of that day, I kept the camera app open, documenting everything I saw and heard. Eleanor sat beside me, sometimes holding my hand, sometimes pacing with outrage. We watched Jacob and Amanda leave the house around 2 in the afternoon, taking a folder of my documents with them. "Where do you think they're going?" I asked Eleanor. My question was answered 3 hours later when they returned. The dining room camera caught their conversation as they entered. "The bank manager was so helpful," Amanda was saying, waving a new stack of papers. "He didn't question anything once you showed him the initial power of attorney paperwork." My initial power of attorney. I vaguely remembered signing something years ago, when Jacob first started helping with my technology and bills after Thomas died. I thought it was just to allow him to call companies on my behalf, not to access my financial accounts. "We should scan everything and email it to Stanley," Jacob said. "He said he can have the guardianship petition ready by next week if we move quickly." Next week. They were planning to legally strip me of my independence next week while I was still on vacation with my sister. The next day brought a new development. A balding man in a gray suit arrived at my house around noon. The cameras captured Jacob greeting him at the door. "Stanley, thanks for coming to the house," Jacob said, shaking the man's hand. "It's easier to go through everything here." So this was the lawyer they'd been speaking with. He looked like exactly what he was, an unremarkable man who made his living helping people navigate legal matters, probably without asking too many questions about the ethics of the situation. "Let's go through the process," Stanley said once they were settled at my dining room table again. "For an emergency guardianship based on cognitive decline, we need to demonstrate that Trisha is unable to make sound financial or medical decisions." "What kind of evidence do you need?" Amanda asked, pen poised over a notepad. "Documented instances of confusion, memory lapses, poor judgment," Stanley listed off. "Medical records indicating cognitive issues would be ideal, but eyewitness accounts from family members can also be compelling." "Mom's doctor, Dr. Walsh, won't support this," Jacob said, frowning. "She just had her annual physical 2 months ago, and he said she was in excellent health for her age." "We'll need to get a different assessment then," Amanda said smoothly. "I have a colleague whose father is a geriatric specialist. He understands these situations." These situations. As if what they were doing was normal, acceptable. "You'll also need to act quickly," Stanley advised, "before she comes back from her trip and realizes what's happening." My phone rang, startling both Eleanor and me. Jacob's name appeared on the screen. "It's him," I whispered to Eleanor. "What do I do?" "Answer it," she hissed back. "Act normal. Don't let him know we're on to them." I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Jacob." "Hi, Mom." His voice was cheerful, normal, loving. How could he sound so natural while plotting against me? "Just checking in to see how you're enjoying your visit with Aunt Eleanor." I forced myself to sound casual. "It's wonderful. We're having such a good time catching up." "That's great. Everything's fine here. Amanda and I are taking good care of the house." I nearly choked on the irony. "What have you been up to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, just taking care of a few things," he said vaguely. "Some paperwork and errands." Some paperwork, indeed. My life's worth of legal and financial documents spread across my dining room table. "Well, I should get going," Jacob said. "Amanda and I are about to have dinner. Love you, Mom." "I love you too," I replied automatically, then immediately felt sick. Did I still love my son? The question itself was painful. After hanging up, I turned to Eleanor. "I need to confront them. Right now." Eleanor shook her head firmly. "Not yet. We need to be smart about this, Trisha. They're building a legal case against you. We need to build one in your defense first." I knew she was right, but the waiting was excruciating. Throughout the evening, I continued monitoring the cameras. Amanda was clearly the driving force behind the plan. When they thought they were alone, her facade of politeness completely disappeared. "Your mother has too much house for one person anyway," she told Jacob as they sat in my living room after dinner. "Once we sell it and the beach property, we'll have enough to pay off our mortgage and my student loans." So that was part of it. Amanda had debt she wanted to clear, using my assets. "I still think we should just talk to Mom about helping us out," Jacob suggested weakly. "She'd probably give us the money if we asked." Amanda rolled her eyes. "And live with her making us feel guilty about it forever? No thanks. Besides, this way we control everything. We're protecting her from herself, Jacob. She's not getting any younger or sharper." I had flashbacks to all the little comments Amanda had made over the years, subtle suggestions that I was becoming forgetful when I misplaced something. Concerned looks exchanged with Jacob when I took an extra moment to calculate a tip at a restaurant. The foundation for their plan had been laid gradually, so slowly, I hadn't noticed it happening. The most disturbing revelation came the next day. Jacob and Amanda were in my kitchen practicing what they would say to a judge. "Your Honor," Jacob rehearsed, "we've noticed our mother exhibiting increasing signs of confusion and poor judgment. Last month, she left the stove on all night." That had never happened. Not once in my entire life had I been so careless. "And she's been giving money away to suspicious charity organizations," Amanda added. "Just last week, she donated $5,000 to a group that called her on the phone." Another complete fabrication. I was careful with donations, researching organizations thoroughly before giving even small amounts. They were planning to lie. To a judge. About me. My own son. With each new discovery, my heart broke a little more. But alongside the pain, something else was growing: determination. These people were not going to steal my life from me. Not without a fight. On the third day of my surveillance, the plan accelerated. Jacob, Amanda, and Stanley gathered around my kitchen table with a stack of legal forms and what looked like a script for a court appearance. "The emergency guardianship hearing will be relatively straightforward," Stanley explained, spreading papers across the table. "The judge will want to hear specific examples of Trisha's mental incapacity and why immediate intervention is necessary. And we need to emphasize the risk to her assets," Amanda added, "that she might make impulsive financial decisions that could leave her destitute." The only impulsive financial decisions threatening my security were the ones they were planning to make with my money. Stanley nodded. "That's correct. We need to present this as protection, not control. Judges respond well to adult children who are concerned about vulnerable parents." Vulnerable. The word made me bristle. I'd survived losing the love of my life after 40 years of marriage. I'd built a new life for myself as a widow. I volunteered at the library 3 days a week, played bridge with friends on Thursdays, and had taken up watercolor painting in my retirement. There was nothing vulnerable about me except my misplaced trust in my son. "Let's practice your testimony," Amanda Stanley suggested. "You'll need to be specific about instances of Trisha's confusion or memory lapses." Amanda straightened up, suddenly tearful on cue. "It was a remarkable performance. Your Honor, it breaks our hearts to bring this action, but we're deeply concerned about my mother-in-law's well-being. Last month, she got lost driving to the grocery store she's been going to for 20 years. She called Jacob in a panic, unable to recognize where she was." Another complete fabrication. I knew Portland like the back of my hand, especially my own neighborhood. "She's been giving her banking information to telemarketers," Amanda continued with her fictional account. "When we try to talk to her about it, she gets defensive and accuses us of trying to control her. We found unpaid bills hidden in drawers some months overdue." The lies kept coming, each one more outrageous than the last. In Amanda's fictional version of my life, I was practically incompetent, already a confused old woman who couldn't manage the simplest tasks of daily living. Stanley took notes, nodding approvingly. "These are exactly the kinds of examples the court needs to hear. Jacob, you'll need to corroborate these instances and add your own observations." Jacob looked uncomfortable, but didn't contradict anything Amanda had said. "I'll support whatever Amanda testifies to," he said quietly. After they finished the court preparation, Stanley left with promises to finalize the paperwork. Once he was gone, Jacob and Amanda had a private conversation that revealed the full extent of Amanda's influence. I know this feels extreme, Amanda said, pouring a large glass of my good wine, which she drank from my special crystal that had been a wedding gift from my mother. But we're doing what needs to be done. It just feels wrong to lie about Mom like this, Jacob admitted, staring down at his own wine glass. Amanda's face hardened. Do you want to spend the next 10 years watching her waste the money your father worked so hard for, money that should be yours eventually anyway? No, but... And do you want to keep living in our tiny apartment while she rattles around in this big house by herself? Not to mention that beach property that sits empty most of the year. Jacob sighed. I know you're right. It's just hard. It's hard because you're a good person, Amanda said, her voice softening as she touched his arm. That's why I love you. But sometimes being a good son means making tough decisions for a parent who can't see what's best anymore. What about our debt? Jacob asked. We promised we'd pay off your student loans with our own money. Amanda waved dismissively. That was before your promotion fell through, before the credit card bills from renovating the apartment. Your mother doesn't need all this money, Jacob. She doesn't even spend what she has. Meanwhile, we're drowning in debt. The truth emerged, like a snake uncoiling. This wasn't about protecting me at all. Amanda had significant debt, probably from her lavish spending habits I'd noticed, but never commented on. The designer clothes, the expensive restaurants, the luxury car she drove that was far beyond what their salaries should support. Once we have control of her accounts, we can allocate the assets more sensibly, Amanda continued. Sell properties she doesn't need, consolidate investments. She'll be taken care of, and we'll finally have some financial breathing room. Jacob nodded slowly. I guess we are protecting her from herself in a way. Mom's always been a bit naive about money. Naive Thomas and I had put Jacob through college without a single student loan. We had paid off our mortgage early through careful budgeting and wise investments. We had built a comfortable retirement through decades of disciplined saving. There was nothing naive about our financial management. Exactly, Amanda agreed eagerly. Remember last month when she couldn't figure out how to use her new phone? She gets confused so easily these days. Jacob laughed. Yeah, the way she kept pressing the wrong buttons was pretty funny. Watch this, Amanda said, standing up and hunching her shoulders. She adopted a wavering voice that was a cruel mockery of mine. Jacob, dear, I can't make the TV work again. Which button do I press? No, not that one. Oh dear, now. It's even worse. Jacob laughed harder, and something in me shattered completely. My son, who I had carried in my body, nursed at my breast, taught to walk and talk, was laughing at this vicious caricature of me. He was not just going along with Amanda's scheme. He was actively participating in it. I dropped my phone, unable to watch anymore. A sob tore from my throat, raw and primal. Eleanor rushed to my side, wrapping her arms around me as I collapsed. How could he? I wept. My own son. My baby. Eleanor rocked me like I was the child now. I'm so sorry, Trisha. So sorry. For nearly an hour I cried until I had no tears left. The betrayal cut so deep I thought I might bleed to death from the wound. This was worse than losing Thomas. Worse than anything I'd experienced in my 68 years of life. When I could finally speak again, I looked up at my sister with swollen eyes. I can't let them do this to me, Eleanor. I won't. No, you won't, she agreed fiercely. And we're going to stop them. How they've been planning this for months. They have a lawyer. They're going to lie to a judge about me. Eleanor's eyes narrowed with determination. My son Michael is an attorney, remember. He specializes in elder law. I'm calling him right now. As she dialed her son's number, a strange calm began to replace my devastation. The initial shock and heartbreak were giving way to something else resolve. Jacob and Amanda thought I was a helpless old woman they could manipulate and control. They were about to learn how very wrong they were. Michael arrived at Eleanor's apartment the next morning. My nephew had his mother's decisive nature and a legal mind that immediately grasped the seriousness of the situation. This is elder abuse, plain and simple, he said after reviewing the video evidence I'd collected. Financial exploitation by family members is one of the most common forms of elder abuse, but having it on video is rare. You've got solid evidence, Aunt Trisha. So what do we do? I asked, feeling stronger with him on my side. First, we document everything Michael said opening his laptop. I'm going to download all this video footage and transcribe the key conversations. Then we need to establish your competence beyond any doubt. He made a few calls, and by that afternoon I had an appointment with Dr. Lillian Chen, a respected geriatric specialist in Seattle who worked with Michael on elder abuse cases. Dr. Chen will conduct a comprehensive cognitive assessment, Michael explained. It's the same kind of evaluation a court would order, but we're doing it preemptively on our terms. The next day, I spent 3 hours with Dr. Chen completing a battery of memory tests, problem-solving exercises, and assessments of my judgment and decision-making capabilities. She was thorough but kind, explaining each step of the process. "Mrs. Williams," she said, "when we finished, I see absolutely no evidence of cognitive impairment. Your memory, reasoning, and judgment are all intact and appropriate for your age. In fact, you scored above average in several areas." Relief washed over me. Even though I knew I was perfectly competent, having medical confirmation felt like armor against Jacob and Amanda's lies. Dr. Chen provided a detailed written report of her findings, which Michael added to our growing file of evidence. Back at Eleanor's apartment, we strategized our next steps. "We could file for a restraining order," Michael suggested, "but I think a direct confrontation might be more effective. They don't know that you know what they're planning." "I want to face them," I said firmly. "I want to see their faces when they realize I've been watching them." Michael nodded. "I think that's the right approach. The element of surprise will be powerful, but we need to be strategic about when and how we do this." We decided that I would return home a day earlier than planned without telling Jacob. Michael would come with me along with Eleanor and my friend Dr. Patricia Walsh, who had been my family physician for 20 years and could vouch for my mental acuity. "Having witnesses is crucial," Michael explained. "It prevents them from trying to spin the confrontation afterward, and will record everything as additional evidence." As we finalized our plan, doubts crept in. Was I overreacting? Could there be some explanation I hadn't considered? Was I misinterpreting what I'd seen? "I keep wondering if I'm making a terrible mistake," I confessed to Eleanor that evening. "Jacob is my only child. What if this destroys our relationship forever?" Eleanor took my hands in hers. "Trisha, they're planning to legally declare you incompetent and take control of everything you own. They're fabricating evidence and planning to lie to a court." Jacob laughed while Amanda mocked you. "You're not overreacting. If anything, you're being remarkably restrained." She was right, of course. The evidence was irrefutable. Still, the thought of confronting my son, of seeing the admission of betrayal in his eyes, made my heart ache. The next morning, we practiced what I would say, how I would remain calm and collected even in the face of their inevitable denials. Michael coached me on which points to emphasize, what legal terms to use to make it clear I understood exactly what they had been planning. "Don't let them gaslight you," he advised. "They'll try to make you doubt what you've seen and heard. They'll claim it was all a misunderstanding, or that they were acting in your best interest. Stand your ground." We drove from Seattle to Portland that afternoon, rehearsing scenarios in the car. I felt simultaneously terrified and determined, like a soldier heading into battle. This wasn't just about my assets or my independence. It was about my dignity, my right to live on my own terms in my later years. As we approached Portland, my phone rang. It was Jacob. My heart pounded as I answered. "Hey, Mom," he said casually. "I just got a notification that your phone location changed. Are you heading back already?" I kept my voice steady. "Yes, I decided to come home today. I'll be there in about an hour." Oh, he sounded surprised and possibly alarmed. "I wish you'd told me. Amanda and I would have picked you up from the train station." "That's okay. Eleanor is driving me. I deliberately didn't mention Michael or our plan." "Great, well, we'll see you soon then." There was a note of tension in his voice now. "Love you, Mom." "See you soon," I replied, unable to return the sentiment. When I hung up, Michael gave me an encouraging nod. "Perfect. You didn't give anything away." As Eleanor drove the final stretch toward my home, I gazed out the window at the familiar landmarks of Portland. The city where I'd built my life with Thomas, raised Jacob, taught generations of students. I'd fought many battles in my lifetime, but none as personal or painful as the one I was about to face. "Are you ready?" Eleanor asked, as we turned onto my street. I straightened my shoulders, as ready as I'll ever be. My house looked exactly as I had left it, peaceful and unassuming in the late afternoon light. Eleanor parked in the driveway and Michael pulled up behind us with Dr. Patricia Walsh following in her own car. We had agreed that Eleanor and I would go in first with Michael and Dr. Walsh waiting nearby until I texted them to join us. Remember, Michael said, handing me a small recording device, "Stay calm, state the facts, and don't let them derail the conversation." I slipped the recorder into my pocket and took a deep breath. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "You've got this, sis." Jacob opened the door before I could even use my key. His expression was a mixture of surprise and poorly concealed anxiety. "Mom, welcome home." He hugged me and I had to force myself to return the embrace. "And Aunt Eleanor, good to see you." "Hello, Jacob," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "Is Amanda here too?" "She's in the kitchen," he replied, taking my suitcase. "We didn't expect you until tomorrow." "Plans change," I said, simply walking into my own home, with a strange feeling of being both an owner and an intruder. Amanda emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile was as practiced and insincere as always. "Trisha, what a nice surprise. We were just preparing dinner. There's plenty if you and Eleanor would like to join us." "That would be lovely," I said, matching her false warmth. "Let me just freshen up first." In my bedroom, I took a moment to collect myself, touching the familiar objects that represented my life. The photo of Thomas and me on our 40th anniversary, the quilt my grandmother had made, the watercolor I'd painted last year that Jacob had framed for my birthday, back when I still believed in his love. When I returned to the living room, Jacob and Amanda were speaking in hushed tones that immediately ceased when they saw me. Eleanor sat stiffly on the sofa, her expression making it clear she wasn't engaging in pleasantries. So I began taking a seat in my favorite armchair. "How has the house-sitting been going?" "Fine, just fine," Jacob said quickly. "Everything's been quiet." "Actually," I said, reaching for my phone, "I was wondering about that. I got a call from Northwest Security while I was away. They said the cameras were fixed. Did you know about that?" The blood drained from Jacob's face. Beside him, Amanda went very still, her practiced smile freezing in place. "Oh, right," Jacob stammered. "I was going to tell you about that. They called out of the blue and said they could finally fit us in for the repair." "I see," I said, scrolling through my phone as if looking for something. "And when were they here?" "Just 2 days ago," Amanda interjected smoothly. "Jacob meant to tell you but didn't want to bother you during your vacation." I looked up from my phone, meeting their eyes directly. "That's interesting. Because according to the security company, they fixed the cameras 4 days ago, and I've been watching the feeds ever since." The effect of my words was immediate and devastating. Jacob's face crumpled in shock, and Amanda's composed expression shattered like glass. Watching the feeds, Jacob repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Jacob. I've seen everything. The papers from my filing cabinet spread across my dining table. The conversations about my will, the beach house power of attorney documents. Your meeting with Stanley about declaring me mentally incompetent. Amanda's performance practice for the judge. Everything." Amanda recovered first, her face hardening into defensive anger. "Trisha, you're completely misunderstanding what you saw. We were organizing your paperwork, trying to help you get your affairs in order. By preparing to sell my beach house, by practicing testimony about my supposed cognitive decline, by lying about me leaving the stove on and getting lost, driving to the grocery store, my voice remained steady despite the rage and hurt churning inside me." Jacob attempted a different approach. "Mom, we're worried about you. You have been forgetful lately, and we just want to make sure you're protected." "Protected?" I repeated incredulously. "Is that what you call planning to take control of all my assets while I'm on vacation? Is that what you call making fun of me and laughing at Amanda's cruel impression?" Jacob flinched at that. Good. He should feel the sting of his betrayal. "This is ridiculous," Amanda declared, standing up. "You're twisting everything you saw and jumping to wild conclusions. This is exactly why we're concerned about your judgment." "I think my judgment is perfectly sound," I countered. "And so does Dr. Chen, the geriatric specialist who evaluated me yesterday, and my longtime physician, Dr. Walsh. In fact, they're both here to support that assessment." I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text. Within moments, the doorbell rang. Eleanor went to answer it, returning with Michael and Dr. Walsh. "What is this?" Amanda demanded, looking from face to face with growing alarm. "Who are these people?" "This is my nephew Michael, who happens to be an elder law attorney," I explained calmly. "And you know Dr. Walsh, who's been my physician for 20 years. Michael stepped forward, professional and authoritative. "Mrs. Williams, I've reviewed the video evidence my aunt has collected, and I've prepared documentation of what appears to be a clear case of attempted financial exploitation and elder abuse." He handed Jacob a folder containing Dr. Chen's cognitive assessment report and a transcript of their recorded conversations. "This is outrageous," Amanda sputtered. "We were trying to help Trisha. Jacob, tell them." Jacob was staring at the transcript, his face ashen. "Mom, Let me be very clear." I interrupted, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. "I am not cognitively impaired. I am not incompetent. I am not unable to manage my own affairs. And I will not allow you to steal my life from me for your financial benefit." Dr. Walsh stepped forward. "I conducted Trisha's annual physical just 2 months ago. She shows no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. Her memory and decision-making abilities are excellent for a woman of her age, or any age for that matter." Amanda's strategy shifted instantly. "Jacob didn't want to do any of this," she said, throwing him under the bus without hesitation. "It was Stanley's idea. He said it would be easier to help Trisha if we had legal authority. Jacob was just worried about his mother." "That's not true," Amanda Jacob said, finally finding his voice. "Don't lie about this. Not anymore." He turned to me, tears welling in his eyes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. It started small, just wanting to help with your finances because Dad always handled that stuff. But then what?" I prompted when he trailed off. "Then the debt got worse," he admitted. "Amanda's student loans are credit cards. The apartment renovations cost twice what we budgeted. My promotion fell through. We were drowning, and I kept thinking about how you had all this money just sitting there. So you decided to take it from me by having me declared incompetent." I stated it as the fact it was. Jacob hung his head. "It sounds so terrible when you say it like that." "Because it is terrible, Jacob. It's not just illegal. It's cruel. Do you have any idea what it felt like to watch my only child plotting against me? To hear you laughing while your wife mocked me?" Amanda tried another tack. "Trisha, we can work this out as a family. There's no need to involve lawyers or doctors. We all want what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I repeated incredulously. "You were planning to sell my home and the beach house that holds all my memories with Thomas. You were going to lie to a judge about my mental capacity. You fabricated incidents that never happened to build a case against me." Michael cleared his throat. "I should mention that I've prepared restraining orders against both of you, ready to file if necessary. I've also drafted a letter to the State Bar Association regarding Stanley's involvement in this matter." Amanda's face contorted with fury. "You can't do this to us. Jacob is your son, your only child." "Yes, he is." I acknowledged, the pain of that reality sharp in my chest, which makes his betrayal all the more devastating. "What do you want from us?" Jacob asked quietly, not meeting my eyes. I looked at my son, this person I had loved unconditionally since the moment he was born, now a stranger to me. "I want the truth, Jacob, all of it. And then I want you both to leave my house." "Leave? But where will we go?" "Back to your apartment, I presume. Your living arrangements are not my concern anymore." Amanda looked panicked now. "Jacob, don't just sit there. Tell her we were trying to help. Tell her we love her." But Jacob seemed to have collapsed in on himself. "It's over, Amanda," he said tiredly. "She knows everything. If you want any possibility of rebuilding trust with your mother," Michael advised Jacob, "complete honesty right now would be a start." Jacob nodded slowly. "We're $90,000 in debt. Amanda's student loans, credit cards, a personal loan I took out to cover the apartment renovations. When Dad died, I thought eventually I'd inherit enough to clear it all, but then the financial pressure kept building. Amanda suggested getting power of attorney first just to help manage things, but then it evolved into the guardianship plan." "It was Stanley's idea," Amanda insisted. "He said it would be cleaner legally than just power of attorney." As if on cue, the doorbell rang again. Eleanor opened it to reveal a balding man in a gray suit, Stanley himself. "Jacob, Amanda." He looked confused at the gathering. "I thought we were meeting to finalize the paperwork this evening." Stanley Jacob said weakly. "This is my mother, Trisha Williams." Stanley blanched. "Mrs. Williams, I thought you were in Seattle until tomorrow." "Plans change," I said for the second time that day, especially when I discovered my son and daughter-in-law were planning to have me declared incompetent while I was away. Stanley looked from Jacob to Amanda, clearly realizing he'd walked into a situation spiraling out of control. "There seems to be some confusion. I was led to believe Mrs. Williams was experiencing significant cognitive decline and needed protection." "Were you?" I asked. "And did you bother to verify that information before preparing legal documents to strip me of my rights?" Stanley had the grace to look ashamed. "I was told the family was in agreement about the need for intervention." The family, meaning these two, I gestured to Jacob and Amanda. "Not the actual person whose life would be affected." "I apologize if there's been a misunderstanding," Stanley said stiffly. "I'll need to reassess this case in light of new information." "You do that," Michael said. "And while you're reassessing, you might want to consider the ethical implications of preparing guardianship documents based solely on the word of interested parties who stand to gain financially without ever meeting the supposed ward." Stanley retreated quickly after that, mumbling about needing to review his files. With his departure, the room fell into heavy silence. Finally, I spoke. "This is what's going to happen now. Jacob and Amanda, you will leave my house tonight. You will return any documents or items you've taken from my files. Michael will oversee changes to my accounts and legal paperwork to ensure you no longer have access." "Mom, please," Jacob began, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. Dr. Walsh and Dr. Chen have documented my mental competence. If you attempt to pursue guardianship or make any claims about my cognitive ability, I will not hesitate to use the video evidence I have and press charges for attempted elder abuse." Amanda stood up, grabbing her purse. "This is insane. You're turning on your own son because of a misunderstanding. Come on, Jacob. We don't need to listen to this." Jacob didn't move. "Amanda, stop. We're in the wrong here, and you know it." "So that's it," Amanda snapped. "You're just giving up. What about our debt? What about our plans?" "Our plans," Jacob repeated. "Our plans were to legally steal from my mother. I can't believe I let things go this far." Amanda's face twisted with contempt. "You're pathetic. Your mother has all this money she doesn't even need while we're drowning in debt, and you're too weak to do what needs to be done." "What needs to be done is for you to leave my home," I said firmly. "Both of you. Now." Amanda glared at me. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is," Michael interjected. "Unless you'd like me to contact the district attorney's office tonight instead of tomorrow." That final threat seemed to penetrate Amanda's anger. She turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Jacob remained seated, looking utterly defeated. "Mom, I know I can never make this right, but I am so sorry." "I believe you're sorry you got caught," I replied. "But sorry doesn't erase what you planned to do to me. Please leave now, Jacob. I can't look at you anymore today." He stood slowly like an old man. "What happens now, with us, I mean?" I felt tears threatening but held them back. "I don't know. That's not something I can answer right now." Jacob nodded, accepting this. At the door, he paused. "I do love you, Mom. Somehow, in my twisted thinking, I convinced myself this was okay because you're my mother, and everything would eventually be mine anyway. I know now how wrong that was." After he left, I finally allowed myself to cry, surrounded by the people who had actually protected me when I needed it most. The tears were both bitter and cleansing, washing away the shock and betrayal of the past few days, making room for whatever would come next. The days following the confrontation were a blur of legal consultations, account changes, and emotional processing. Michael helped me revoke Jacob's power of attorney and remove his access to all my financial accounts. We changed the locks on my house and reprogrammed the security system with new codes. The practical matters were straightforward. The emotional aftermath was anything but. Jacob moved out of the apartment he shared with Amanda and into a small studio across town. He texted me daily simple messages of apology and regret that I read, but rarely answered. Amanda, true to her nature, attempted a different approach. She called Eleanor, trying to convince her to intervene on their behalf. She actually had the nerve to say I was being vindictive and holding a grudge, Eleanor reported after hanging up on her. as if you're the one who did something wrong. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I agreed to meet Jacob for coffee, at a neutral location, a small cafe downtown where Eleanor's friend worked. I arrived early, my stomach in knots. When Jacob walked in, I barely recognized him. He had lost weight, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked like a man who had aged years in just weeks. "Mom," he said softly, sitting across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." "I'm still trying to understand, Jacob," I said, after we'd ordered. "How could you do this to me, after everything your father and I did for you?" Jacob stared into his coffee cup. "There's no excuse. At first it was just about helping you with technology bills, things Dad used to handle. Then, when Amanda and I got into financial trouble, it became about access to money. The guardianship plan was a slow evolution that somehow started seeming reasonable because Amanda kept framing it as protection." "Protection," I repeated bitterly. "I know how it sounds now," he admitted. "I let myself be manipulated by Amanda, but that doesn't absolve me. I made choices, terrible choices that hurt the person who has loved me most in this world." We talked for over an hour. Jacob revealed that he and Amanda were divorcing. Her true character finally clear to him. He had taken a second job to start paying down their debt, refusing Amanda's demands that he keep pursuing my assets. He was in therapy trying to understand how he had strayed so far from his values. I didn't offer forgiveness that day or financial help, though part of me wanted to. Some wounds are too deep to heal quickly, and some lessons too important to shortcut. But I did agree to continue talking to see where time might lead us. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my own life and independence. I joined a support group for seniors who had experienced exploitation or abuse from family members. The stories I heard there broke my heart, but also showed me I wasn't alone. Financial elder abuse is shockingly common, even from beloved family members. "The hardest part is trusting again," said Gloria, an 80-year-old woman whose grandson had emptied her bank account. "Not just trusting others, but trusting yourself and your own judgment." That resonated deeply with me. I had missed the signs, ignored my instincts about Amanda allowed Jacob more access to my finances than was prudent. Part of my healing process was forgiving myself for those lapses in judgment while also committing to better boundaries going forward. With Michael's guidance, I created a comprehensive estate plan that included protections against future exploitation. I named Eleanor as my healthcare proxy and financial power of attorney should I ever truly become incapable of managing my own affairs. I updated my will, still leaving assets to Jacob, but with structures in place to prevent misuse. After 6 months of consideration, I decided to sell the beach house on my own terms. Thomas and I had created beautiful memories there, but maintaining 2 properties was becoming more work than pleasure. I found a young family to buy it with 3 children who reminded me of Jacob at that age, excited about building sandcastles and flying kites. I used part of the proceeds to establish a small foundation for elder justice advocacy, turning my painful experience into something that might help others. Jacob and I continued our careful reconciliation process. We met for lunch every other week, sometimes with his therapist present to facilitate harder conversations. He found a job at a nonprofit that aligned better with his true nature than the high-pressure financial firm where he'd met Amanda. The manipulative, money-obsessed son I'd glimpsed in those security feeds seemed to be fading, revealing glimpses of the kind, thoughtful person I'd raised. 1 year after the confrontation, Jacob asked if he could come to Sunday dinner again, a tradition we'd had before everything fell apart. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. "I don't expect things to ever be exactly the same between us," he said, as we sat at the dining room table where I'd watched him plot against me. "But I want you to know that I'm committed to rebuilding whatever kind of relationship you're willing to have." "Trust is like a mirror," Jacob, I told him. "Once it's broken, you can put the pieces back together, but you'll always see the cracks in your reflection." He nodded, understanding. "I know, Mom. I just hope that over time there might be fewer cracks." I've learned so much through this painful journey. I've learned that family ties, while precious, don't guarantee protection from harm. I've learned that aging doesn't mean surrendering control or dignity. Most importantly, I've learned that I am stronger than I ever imagined. The security cameras that revealed Jacob and Amanda's betrayal still monitor my home, but now they represent something different: my vigilance, my self-protection, my refusal to be victimized. I check them occasionally, not out of fear, but as a reminder of how far I've come. To those of you watching who might see yourselves in my story, whether you're the vulnerable parent or the adult child navigating complex family dynamics, I hope you take this to heart. Communication, honesty, and respect must flow in both directions regardless of age. No financial pressure justifies exploitation. No desire to protect warrants deception. I didn't expect to find myself at 68 rebuilding trust with my only child, establishing new boundaries and advocating for elder justice. But life rarely follows our expectations, does it? In the breaking and rebuilding, I've discovered parts of myself I never knew existed: resilience, wisdom, and the courage to stand firmly in my own truth. Have you ever had to rebuild trust after a devastating betrayal? How did you balance forgiveness with self-protection? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more reflections on family aging and the complicated journey of learning to trust again. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find strength if you ever face a similar challenge.